Hello, my name's Michael Conneely and I'm filming this promotional video from our healing centre in the far west of Ireland on the County Sligo coast. And I'm telling you about my novel Rune Magic, which is available on Amazon worldwide. And I'm doing about 4 little readings from the novel. I'm very pleased with the novel, with the spirit of the runes that it expresses. And basically the theme is that the great warrior magician god of the ancient Norse, Odin, took up from earth a young man and a young woman, because Odin had heard the prophecy that the wonderful Aesir gods are doomed, that Ragnarok is coming when the forces of chaos will destroy the gods. And Odin spent most of his reign trying to work out a way of averting Ragnarok. And he even raised a Norse seeress from her grave barrow, but she told him there was no hope. But Odin sought constantly to avert the destruction of the beautiful, powerful Aesir gods. And he came to the feeling that this young man and this young woman somehow could preserve a future for the gods. And so he took them up into the earth realm, Middleearth, when Ragnarok was approaching. Already the dreadful Fimbul winter had started, 3 years of endless winter. And their first port of call was the home of a Gothi, a Norse ritual priest, and his family. And whilst there, the young man, Declan, read from rune tablets that they had found in their backpacks when they landed where Odin had taken them into Middle-earth as it approached Ragnarok. And Declan was of the belief, in fact he'd known before all this started, that he himself must undertake the rituals of empowerment that Odin himself took. Odin hung upside down in the world tree Yggdrasil during the period when he was leading the Norse people to the northern lands. And whilst hanging in trance from the world tree, he seized the magic of the runes. He saw in the twigs and branches the shape of each letter of the rune alphabet. And Odin went on to drink from Mimir's well, the well of wisdom. And the young man formed the conclusion that he too must do these steps that Odin himself undertook. So, in this passage, Ragnarok is very much looming, and Declan decides to undertake the first of the frightening steps of initiation, to hang upside down on the world tree Yggdrasil and seek the wisdom of the runes, where each rune tells us something absolutely amazing and profound about some special aspect of our life. The first rune, Feu, tells us about value issues and what is our relation to the issue of value. The second rune, Uruz, tells us about strength. Are you strong enough for your journey? And so on. So, when the day came for Declan to undertake the initiation he dreaded, Declan refused to eat when he finally awoke. He stood there shockingly before them. He looked so harrowed. He seemed almost destroyed by the third Norn's prophecy that his life would be short. "Smear my body in white clay," Declan told them grimly in a voice that was almost beyond despair. The clay from the pool is the paste that the Nornir used to heal the world tree, It will heal me as I prepare for my part in the coming end of time. Smear me with white clay to betoken coming death. His voice was sounding even further from them in his coming trance. The other three went repeatedly to the waterside, back and forth, until every inch of Declan's body was covered with thick swirls of limey clay, which set into a corpse-white sheet rigid on his skin. Then Declan put his hands before him and briefly tilted his head far backwards as he stared up to the crown of the world tree Yggdrasil. Then grimly he shouldered his spear and waded round the edge of the pool to where the three roots of the world tree opened at the base of the trunk, and he went towards the gap between them. The other three shuddered and cried out loud, when 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on the earth. Declan suddenly pierced his side with the spear as Odin had done before him, when he first seized the magic of the runes, and Declan disappeared between the roots, leaving a trail of bright red blood on the snowy rocks, and a red swirl in the water, which was seized and taken by the current. Magda gasped and put her hand to her mouth. I didn't know he was going to do that with the spear. Oh no, he could die. Things are coming towards us, Frithgeir suddenly said. What things? Magda almost screamed. Look through the shadows of the wood. They found themselves trembling in every limb, not from fear, they realised, but from dizzy, mounting excitement. Something is coming to us, Frithgeir whispered, something big and massive, vast, and in its train many lesser things of the same nature, Magda whispered, using her sight to penetrate the wood further than the eye could see. Every nerve in their bodies began to sing ecstatically. Declan's act is attracting entities, she told them. The old ones. The words came unbidden from Frithgeir's lips. It must be the old ones. And without their wishing it, each of them stepped forward as the primal attraction of Earth's most ancient gods and spirits drew and enveloped them in their ancient presence. The old ones, Magda whispered. I can see them. They are making themselves present as Declan seizes the runes. They have expectations of him, Brosny murmured. The primal spirits came and they carried Declan's soul into a state beyond sleeping or waking, to the other world. His body hanging naked on the tree, he came to know his spirits, gods, ghosts, ancestors and beasts. And they dismembered his body and tore it into pieces and then regurgitated what they had picked over. I'll remember your beaks, Declan shouted at the ravens. You won't get away with this. I shall know you, he warned them. But no sound came out of his lips because his lips had not yet rehealed. And it felt like his face split with the pain of shouting at them. And anyway, the ravens just fell around laughing at his futile raving. Declan tried to feel if the other bits of him were all there, but it hurt him to even try and move to look for them. Declan's mind was taken apart in the spirit realm. His mind dissolved. All his conditioning was taken apart, and he saw things as they are. Normal objects came before his mind, but now he could see they have fantastic scope. Their implications. Each thing speaks volumes to those who can hear them. Each thing is a magic broomstick, Declan cried out. It can carry me anywhere. Each object that came into his mind, its implications were what he had never realised before, beautiful or terrible. ancient or totally new. The utter beauty of the objects his mind called in as he hung there were breathtaking. It was like he was seeing the universe for the first time. The colours were fantastic, bright beyond bright, utterly beautiful. Declan hung in a realm of beauty and terror, hanging between the worlds, lost to time. He saw now the futility of the things people normally focus on in what they call their lives. Declan began to receive the fullness of the rune vision on Yggdrasil. His mind grew increasingly exhausted as he hung there. Yet, clarity grew from the exhaustion. His body was racked. He was going beyond pain. How many days? He had no idea. And yet he gave thanks. In the dissolution of Declan's mind, he knew the void and peace and the certainty of the void. His exhausted mind was void and simple and easily overwhelmed by sensation. In what to most men seems every day, Declan now saw true meaning, the hand of God. He thrilled with the joy of life and death. He saw how the material world is just a skin on the spirit world, and how the past is in the present, and how the present is the womb of the future. So past, present and future are always in the same time everywhere. And he saw how lives and the material world are just the outworking of forces much vaster, much more ancient. The word Yggdrasil kept rolling around Declan's hurting skull and echoing. The name of the world tree, Yggdrasil, means Yggdra's horse, someone had told him once. Yggdra means terrible one. Yggdra means ogre, one of Odin's names, Declan dimly remembered. There must be a message, his mind told him. Someone had implanted a message for those words to come to him now. Declan's head hurt so much. The message, Declan's mind groped dully. The message, horse? How could a tree be a horse? And at last he remembered. Odin had ridden the tree like riding a stallion. Painfully, Declan shifted his gaze and he could see it. I too must ride the tree to seek the magic of the runes. In the places where the branches split and the twigs split off, Declan now saw clearly. There were rune shapes. Declan began to see them. Payoff, the gambler's cup. Tyr, the war god. Runes he had learned from his mother's books. Declan looked around. He saw the ravens and the wolves were gathering at the foot of the world tree, waiting for the parts of his body. He flinched. The ravens and the wolves eyed him toothfully, and he hardly felt he had the strength to fight them and live on. He knew that if he died, the ravens and the wolves would consume him, flesh and bone and sinew, everything he loved about his body, nothing would remain. But then Declan screamed as he foresaw that they would consume him anyway. First, the wolves came towards him. There were two of them, Gary and Frecky. But it was not just his tortured body that they sought with their gaping jaws and lolling tongues. It was his soul. Declan lived, but the two wolves took over part of him. But as Declan started to scream, he surrendered, because he suddenly realised it was actually not too bad after all. And he suddenly realised they shared their souls with him as he with them. And now Declan knew what it was to be pack brothers. He knew what it was to howl at the moon. He knew what it was to fight for dominance and mate joyously and fiercely, and see the rest of the animal world as food, and what it was to care for your pups and play with them. And then the ravens consumed him. They were the same two that he already knew, or thought he knew, Hugin and Munin. But they consumed him in a different way. They took over part of his consciousness, and he took over part of theirs. And so they became friends and travelling fellows and allies. And Declan now found he had raven's wings sprouting from his shoulder blades, and a raven's head and neck upon his shoulders, and he opened his beak and cawed viciously, and the raven part of his being soared above the well, and then returned to his tortured frame. But in that brief and triumphant flight, Declan knew what it was to eat the guts of dead warriors and kings, and glory in a find of carrion, and soar above the cliffs of limestone affired with buried rowan trees. And then Declan received another gift. He knew with utter certainty that when you do not allow your beast spirits enough action, enough of your physical motion, enough of your body consciousness, they first get edgy and they then get angry. And then without fail, you will die to life. You will become a shell. And Declan realised in this pain-racked vision that what was wrong with his own world, where he came from, with the country he'd grown up in. And that was why he was called to reclaim the groves of innocence now. And at the next moment Declan understood Loki, because that was what went wrong. It went wrong when the Norse folk left the simple life behind, and in the end became the Vikings centuries later, when they started to have their arranged marriages and rules beyond imagining, and did anything for money. That was how the fire spirit Loki, trickster Loki, once Odin's blood brother, got pushed out. And Loki hated them for that in all the centuries following. And then things got worse. Loki got blamed and finally bound. And thinking of Loki, "Oh no," Declan gasped, "not you." Appearing before Declan's naked dangling body was the fire spirit himself. And Declan felt totally vulnerable and exposed. The two of them talk. Loki taunts and minces Declan's mind. And we resume the reading with, "What do you want from me, Loki?" Declan shot the question. "What do you want?" Loki answered him. "You have been too fit to even tell anyone your secret plan, because you doubt it and you lack the courage," Loki challenged him. "Remember this conversation when you go to Mimir's grove. I am who you need, not just Mimir, not just Odin. Remember what I could have been. Do you really want to save your own world from itself? Can you? Isn't it gone too far? But Declan, if you really do have the courage to be a hero, and if you do succeed, remember me. I too want to change. Remember, we can help each other, you and I, Declan. The fact is, we need each other." And with a smell of sulphur, Loki disappeared. "We will meet again." The words echoed soundlessly in Declan's skull. Thank you.